Hello and welcome. We finally have the grades in for midterm 2. We have about 2,200 students in all of Chem 1210 taking the test. Average score 64%. Half the class scored above a 64.6%. So if we're thinking of our average, think of a bell curve describing the distribution on the test. If you're better than the average score of about 64%, then your grade would be C plus or better. And then B minus, probably about 5% better. B plus, A minus, A. These grade cuts would probably come in about 5% increments. So looking at about 69% for the B minus range, 74% for the B, 79% for B plus, 84% for the A minus or better range, and I'd say about 89% and up should be considered in the A range for this test. Now, this is the way we would set our final grades in the class if the overall average in the class ends up being a 64%. So we'll take our class at the end of the semester. This is actually done by the vice chair of undergraduate studies in the department. He takes a look at all the Chem 1210 classes, looks at their averages, compares their scores on the exams, sees how well a particular class does in comparison with the others. That's for fine-tuning where this average grade gets set. So if our class is perceived to be among the better classes, maybe we'll be curved to a slightly better grade. If our class is perceived to be among maybe the lower sections, and maybe it's curved to a slightly lower grade. Right in the middle, I'd say if we perform typically on exams, we'd be set right around the C plus range. I think our class has been doing pretty good. I think all indicators are that we are certainly doing well in our tests, so we're certainly not underperforming for our class. And I think we just need to continue working hard through midterm 3 and the final. So if the average grade in the class ends up being a 64% at the end of the semester, I think roughly speaking, these are where the grade lines would fall. If you're above average, the below average scores for C, C minus, D plus, and for the E range going downward, probably down in increments of about 5% lower as well. So probably about a 59% grade would be in the C solid range, a 54% for C minus range, and then the D plus range probably going down to about 49%. Oh, I forgot the D range. So we have the D solid range, no D minus at OSU, and then the E. So probably about 44% on this test. If our average grade in the class is a 64%, you'd probably only need about a 44% to get the letter grade of D in the class, and then below that would be into the E range. Okay, so grades go up in about increments of about 4 to 5%, depending on exactly where the average lies. And same way downward towards the lower grade ranges. Hopefully this gives you a sense of what grade you can consider on your test, given how we would set grades if this is where the average grade ends up falling at the end of the semester when we look at the average scores considering all of the items in the class. We'll take a look towards the end of this presentation on how you can calculate your grade, how to consider calculating where you stand in the class, and kind of seeing perhaps where you fall relative to average at this moment in the course. So let's review how we calculate homework scores in this class. If you actually go to the Mastering Grade Book, that would be the best place to go to check your score. I know scores appear in Carmen. The Carmen grade book with mastering is all screwed up. There's a variety of reasons why I don't just delete those items from the Carmen grade book. The primary reason being having the items in the Carmen grade books allows the assignments to appear in your Carmen calendar. So I don't want to just delete the assignments because then you won't necessarily see them in the calendar that you've been using throughout the semester. But know that if you want to know your actual total score, use the score shown in mastering. What you want to look at is your total score, your total points. Add all of those up that you've earned on all of the assignments. Now, the other thing you could do if you want to check your grade at any moment in the class is then add up all the points that are required on the required pre-lecture and problem set assignments. Because the points that are available on the dynamic study modules, those are the chemistry practice problems like quizzes, and then also the ones in the daily extra, those points are not required to be earned, but they're available to add into your score if you do some of those assignments, so they add in as extra credit. And so right now, the total possible points on these required assignments through tomorrow's pre-lecture assignment is 317 points. So that's through the assignments on October 25th, that pre-lecture assignment for tomorrow's lecture. So you may not have done that assignment yet. You may not have finished the problem set that's due tonight. So you may still have some of these points that you're working on earning. But that's where you should be through tomorrow's class for a 100% score. So now take the total that you've earned. So take your total, divide by 317 points, and then times 100%. And then if you want to check this score later in the class, just go add the points that are required on pre-lectures and problem sets following tomorrow's pre-lecture assignment. A lot of students have over a 100% score. The 100% is your maximum score on the homework. This is so you don't lose ground through not doing some of the extra assignments. So we can set where we want everyone to be is at that 100% score. If you get a score better than that, that's great. Hopefully those problems help you learn and they're productive towards learning and studying the material. But I would also then caution and say if those materials aren't useful for your studying, then go do something else instead. So just focus on getting a 100% score so you don't lose ground for the homework aspect of your grade, but then look towards the other items. If they're useful for you, they're productive for you, do them. If not, look for something else to do that's more productive for your learning. I think a lot of students do the daily extras and they're not always all that valuable. They are for some, they're not for all, but just do them if they're valuable for you and find something valuable to do if not. Now, lecture score can be calculated by going to Top Hat. Carmen's not live updated with your Top Hat score. It's kind of complicated to do a grade push, so we don't push these all that often. So far, we've had 87 total questions that we've asked. And each question has 1.25 points available to be earned, making the total right now, the maximum possible score would be 108.75 points. Now, you don't have to earn every one of those points for a 100% score. If you look in Top Hat will, if you look at your percent that you've earned so far, it'll tell you the percentage of these points that you've earned. That's not your actual grade that we're going to set at the end of the semester. The way we're going to set your grade is we're going to look at the total points you earned on content questions given beginning in week 2. So we gave 12 questions in total of extra credit of one type or another. So we gave, I think, 8 or 9 questions in week 1 that counted as extra credit, and then a few survey questions that also counted as extra credit. So this means there's only been 75 content questions week 2 and beyond. So right now, that's 75 questions, and that's through yesterday's lecture. So 75 questions given. Now you only need to earn 1 point per question to get a 100% score. So the week 1 questions, the survey questions, and that extra 0.25 points that you earn each time you're right on a question, those count towards extra credit towards your assignment with a 100% maximum. So you take your total points, so take your score, divide right now by 75 points for the 75 content questions, and as we ask more questions, just increase the number of points that you're supposed to earn for the 100% score, and then calculate away. So you get your percent, 100% max again. Okay, so you can earn extra credit every time you're right. You earned a bunch of credit in week 1 so that you can miss a lecture here or there if you get sick or whatever. And you also don't have to worry about being correct in every single instance on problems in class. So if you're wrong on a question, I wouldn't feel too bad about it. Try to learn something from your mistake, but don't feel bad about losing points because I'm sure you still have a pretty good lecture score. As of today, about 80 to 90% of the class has the 100% maximum score. So most people in the class have a perfectly awesome homework score in lecture, and you can withstand to miss a lecture if you do get sick as we wrap up this semester. So focus on learning in lecture and focus on trying authentically to solve problems without worrying about getting the right answer every single time. Okay, so let's go over how you might calculate and consider your score at this point in the semester. So lab, And let's look at the value of each of these items in the class. So labs, 20% of your grade. Homework, 7.5%. Recitation and lecture, 5% each. Midterm 1 was 10%. Midterm 2, 12.5%. Midterm 3 will be 15%. So you can make some ground up by getting a good score in midterm 3, since it is worth a little bit more than midterms 1 and 2. And then the final, you can pick up a lot of ground on the final with a good score. 25% of your grade is determined by the final. Typical averages here. Labs about 85% typically. Lecture, or excuse me, the homework score is about 90%. Lecture and recitation about 95% each. Midterm 1 was 76% was the actual 12-10 average. 64% was the 12-10 average for midterm 2. And just ballparking 70%, give or take, for midterm 3 in the final. If these scores actually pan out, as do all the others, then we'll have about a 77% overall average at the end of the semester. So what you can do on these items is put in your scores that you have on these different items, and you may have to go to different sources to figure these grades out. I hope everybody has a 100% homework score. I hope you have a 100% recitation score and 100% lecture score, because you're just kind of losing ground if you don't. It's very easy to get those scores just by participating and by staying caught up with the class. Lab, it's pretty hard to get a 100% score in lab, but it's probably not too hard to get a 90 or 95% score. So hopefully you're not losing ground in the 4 first areas of the class, so you can cushion yourself a little bit for your exam scores. Now you might be able to withstand one low exam score, but hopefully not, more than one score. So hopefully we're looking towards improving, these grades as we continue through the class and learning from our mistakes. Now, so what you can do is put in your actual scores here, check your grades, calculate where you lie relative to the 77% score. Now, what I would do is put your exam average in here. So whatever you've averaged on midterm 1 and 2, I'd go ahead and throw that into midterm 3 in the final, using your current exam average on midterms 1 and 2. And that'll show you, if you need your score to improve, to get above average. And then I would probably think with the 77% overall average, I'd say, think of that as being your C plus range. Then I'd say go up by about 3% grade increments above the average. And then I'd say to consider your grade downward on the lower end, probably down by about 4% grade increments. So if you're looking at getting, say, a C minus, a lot of students need a C minus, I would say that you probably want to shoot for getting about a 69% overall in the class. And so think about what scores you might need on all these items in order to arrive at a score of about 69%. Now, I think in the past, the C minus range has actually been a little bit lower than this, meaning it'll probably be somewhere near this line, maybe even slightly more generous. Probably not much more generous than, say, 2 to 4%. So if you're in the 65 to 70% range at the end of the semester, as long as the final average is around a 77, I think, that's probably a score you want to shoot for. So shoot for the 70. If you get a little bit lower than that, be hopeful that it's possible it may still be a C minus. But I'd be shooting for the grade range of about 70 to try to get in the C minus range, and hoping it could be a little bit lower depending on where the actual average lies at the end of the semester. So updating and some reminders on improving performance towards midterm 3 and the final. I think spacing out your tasks in terms of skimming the chapters, doing some pre-lecture video watching, actively reading the book, detailed reading later, kind of maybe doing a skim, watch a video, do a detailed read, come to class, and do a second detailed read. That's what I think I recommend for people who are struggling in the class to get above the average. So if you're struggling to get your score above the average, I would say, try to get 2 detailed reads in if you can, one before lecture, one after lecture, and then look for an indicator on the problem sets in that you should be able to do most of the problems with confidence, and you should be applying a lot of information that you've learned and not necessarily going back to the book to look a lot of stuff up. And if you find that you are still looking a lot of stuff up, then I think, we got to go back, review the sample and practice exercise problems. In fact, don't skip those when you read the book. Do a lot of the sample and practice exercise problems. The practice problems that come up in the text, there's two questions that are given. One's a short answer, one's a multiple choice. The short answer question is answered in the back matter in the text. It's in the near the index if you have the print book, or it's in the back matter if you're using the e-text. So do the short answer problem. So what I would probably do is work out the sample exercise, the one that gives you a worked out solution right in the book. Work that out on your first read. Work the practice exercise out on your second read. And if you need to keep going back, go back through some of these problems, read through them, read through the solution, and make sure you understand the content. So you're focusing on your learning, building on what you know, looking to learn more about what you don't know, and looking at most problems and saying, you really need to understand the problem inside and out. And if you do, you should be really well prepared for whatever might come at you on a midterm. And then finally, study groups is helpful, but don't rely on others. Try to lead others. If you could teach others how to solve problems, then that'll really go a long way towards making sure that you understand the material inside and out and have the best preparations for the upcoming exams. So I would recommend, looking at the practice exams as a chance to give you an indicator of how well you know the material. But when you take practice exams, make sure the books are closed, the internet's closed, you give yourself an exam environment, and that you then calculate your score and honestly look at your grade, consider where you need to do some reviewing, go review those areas, and then come back and do another practice test. I don't think it's necessary that you do all of the 7 practice exams. I would focus on the 2 practice exams from last year, like the autumn 17 and the spring 18 exams. I might actually recommend that you do one of the other practice exams first, or 2 of the other practice exams first before doing those, so you get the best 2 exams once you've done a little bit of studying, a little bit of preparation for your exams. One last thing I'll note, on the final exam in the class, you may start hearing that the exam's easy. In the past, we've given an ACS final exam, which had an average probably in about the 75 to 80% range when we'd give the exam. We're actually not giving that test anymore, but we grade on a curve. Like the average grade in the class is in the C+ range, almost regardless of where the average is. I suspect our final average will be lower than the ACS average, but it actually will give you a greater chance to pick up space between your grade and the average. So it'll give you a better chance to earn more points towards the class if the average is actually lower. But the key would be you have to do well. And if the whole class does well, if miraculously the final average ends up being closer to 80% still, then we'll know that this class did remarkably well, or that Chem 1210 did remarkably well, and they'll be rewarded with a better average grade than what we would typically give without that information. So there's no reason not to keep trying. There's no reason not to try to improve your study habits. Keep at it. Keep working hard. Try to build on what you've been doing and make positive steps towards being able to solve a wide variety of problems, and just being able to hopefully teach others along the way how to solve their problems, to make sure that you get that feedback that you understand the material and you know where to go to when you're stuck, and you get yourself unstuck and move forward. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some information about where your grade may stand following midterm 2. I'll see you guys in class on Thursday.